that it's fine. Oh, all right. And like I said, we're not going to start quite yet. We're just waiting just a few more minutes just to see if more people show up. And then we'll do a round of introductions for whoever wants to introduce themselves, and we have a presentation. And for anyone who wants water, there's water over on that table. There are also handouts that are over on that table that have some important information that you might want to look at. Thank you. Oh, I'm going to introduce myself in a bit, but yeah, my name is Mac McCrite. I am from Greater Boston Legal Services. I'm a volunteer attorney there, and I am helping to run the elections. Yep.
Turn it on.
Okay, you've got the mic over here. No, okay, but yeah, they can't hear you unless you talk through the mic sometimes.
Hello, Zoom. Can you hear me?
And if you could speak back, maybe unmute yourself, that would be good. Yeah, we want to make sure that we can hear those on Zoom.
Hi, Helen.
They're both unmuted,
Or Zulma?
but no audio.
Oh, yeah, they might be in the interpreter channel and we might not hear them that way. Okay. And do we know what the elderly disabled public housing slot is up there? Oh, that's you. Okay. Okay, well, maybe we'll just have to see if somebody else joins on Zoom and then we can ask. Is it somebody's birthday today?
Yeah.
Oh, it's my wife's birthday too. Yeah.
I know, right? You have work?
Yeah, she's down the Cape.
Oh. Yeah.
It's not a cracker jack. It's not a cracker jack wing. It's how do you call it? It's a cracker jack. It's not a cracker jack. Life insurance.
Okay, I think I'm gonna have us start. So welcome. This is the third information session we have for the elections for the Boston Housing Authority Resident Advisory Board. And today's session is focusing on BHA's elderly disabled public housing developments. And this also can include some sites that are what are called mixed finance elderly disabled housing. That is, they were regular elderly disabled housing. BHA switching them to getting Section 8, but they're still originally were a BHA elderly disabled site. So we're going to give you some information and there will be materials on there. And we also have staff here from BHA, obviously, that are helping out, as well as from the Mass Union of Public Housing Tenants that have been doing outreach for the elections and are taking nomination papers and will help people with any statements that they need to make about running for the RAB. And so I'm going to, I know there's a second mic. We're going to have that second mic circulate and people can identify themselves if they wish to. If you don't want to identify yourself, that's fine. But usually just a little bit about who you are and what site you're at, that would be helpful. So if we can start at that table.
Hello. Hi, I'm Leanna. I'm the Digital Equity Coordinator at BHA.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Leek Bush. I work in the Department of Resident Leadership.
I'm the BHA liaison, Simone.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Say your name, what development you work with.
Hi, my name is Teresa Suber. I live in Jamaica Plain.
I'm LaShonda. I'm with Mass Union.
Jack Kutushian is from 140 Clarendon Street. I also speak 5 languages.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jaime Esteves. I am from Mission May in Rosebery.
Hi, my name is Bill Walker and I live at 10 City, 130 Thomas.
Good morning. My name is Elise Lewis. I'm from JP Jamaica Plain.
Good morning, I'm Cassandra from Asonia Homes in the North End.
My name is Eugenia Smith and I'm Bellflower Elderly Disabled.
My name's Bertel Forsberg. I'm also from Bellflower.
I'm Angus McCullough. I'm from 280 Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Christiana Erekosima from Hassan Apartments, Hyde Park.
Happy birthday.
Hi, I'm Walter Smith from Olmsted Green on 2 Kingbird Road. I'm a member of the Community Advisory Council as well.
Hi, my name is Ya Wang Dong. I live in the 503 Columba Avenue, apartment 12. Before I live the house, the apartment is Haley House apartment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, your name.
My name is Henry Francois. Chewy to need to Dutch yourself.
My name is Jennifer. I live 1875 Dorchester Ave, Peabody House.
Good morning. My name is Georgia McEady. I'm the former chairperson of the Section 8 committee.
Hi, I'm Ben Echevarria. I'm the Director of Organizing for Mass Union.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Fernandez. I'm from Boston Housing, Resident Leadership Community Affairs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tabitha. I'm also with the Resident Leadership Department for the Boston Housing Authority.
John Kane, BHA Operations.
Okay. And so we have a PowerPoint presentation, and at this point, we may want to lower the shades just on the last few places we've got shades on and dim the lights, and then we can kick on the PowerPoint. Oh, let me just double check. I think right now we still on Zoom only have BHA staff or translators that are available on translation channels, but if others come on to Zoom in the middle of this and want to sort of speak up or ask any questions, that would be fine. We're just loading the PowerPoint presentation. Hold on. Okay, just to orient people, and I think it will be important for us after we do today's session for the BHA staff and Mass Union staff that are working on outreach to go back and look at some of these lists, because from the addresses some people provided, I think some of the people who are here today are from the BHA leased housing program and may have project-based vouchers through the BHA. Others are from the BHA Elderly Disabled Program. The reason that's important is we want to make sure that you show up for the right election event, because there are different dates for different elections. And we wouldn't want people to show up for the election that's not their election, because that could be a problem. So let me go back over what's coming up, what we've done already, and what's coming up 2 weeks from now. So we're in a cycle now of working on elections for the Boston Housing Authority Resident Advisory Board. We've had 2 information sessions so far. The first one was on Monday of this week for BHA's family public housing sites. We had one on Tuesday, which was for BHA's leased housing, Section 8, mass rental voucher, city voucher programs. And today's session is really focused on the BHA's elderly disabled public housing developments. And then 2 weeks from now, starting right after Labor Day, there are a series of 3 election events that are happening in this room. So the first of those is on Tuesday, September the 3rd at 6 o'clock, and that's for the Family Public Housing Program. The next one will be on Thursday, September the 5th at 6 p.m., and that will be for the BHA Leased Housing Program. And the last one is going to be exactly 2 weeks from today in this room, same time, 11 o'clock, and that's for the Elderly Disabled Program. So the Elderly Disabled Program is the easiest one to remember, because you basically just show up 2 weeks from today here again if you're in the Elderly Disabled Program. However, if it turns out that some of you are in the leased housing program, we want to make sure you're going to the right election, which is the evening before. So let me move on to the next slide. So what is the Boston Housing Authority Resident Advisory Board? Well, they are something that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, the federal and state agencies that run the public housing and the Section 8 programs require all housing authorities across the country and across the Commonwealth to have. And they are groups of residents who advise the housing authority on its policies and its programs. And Congress mandated that these bodies get created back in 1998. And Boston Housing Authority actually created the first RAB in 1999. So there have been RABs now at the BHA for over 25 years. And then a few years back, maybe about 5 years ago, the state said, yeah, that's a good idea. We should have state tenants also get involved in coming up with the state plan. So they added that. Now, this is the 8th RAB election that we've had since 1999. Usually the RAB term is for about 3 years. The last RAB served a lot longer than that. That was COVID. That's not usual. It's usually about 3 years. And the thing for you to know is that the RAB members are volunteers. So there is not compensation for serving on the RAB. You're doing it basically as a public service. But the RAB does have a budget which can provide for things like transportation for the RAB members to get to meetings, light meals for when they're meeting in the evening, as well as some funding for people to participate in various kinds of conferences that may exist either within the state or outside of the state, where people may get some more information about things that are important for the public and assisted housing programs. Now, the RAB reviews and advises the housing authority on these policies and programs. There's a 5-year plan, and this year is actually the year that the 5-year plan is going to be done, which talks about sort of big goals and things over the 5 years BHA hopes to accomplish. And then each year after that, they have a progress report. Here's how well we did. We were able to produce this many units. We were able to get work orders done within such and such a period of time. We got more people enrolled in the family self-sufficiency program. Or sometimes, whoops, we didn't do as well as we wanted, and we need to improve things a little bit on the progress report. And then there's also the annual plan, and that includes things like, what's the capital spending going to be at your site? So for example, at Bellflower, they might say, okay, 2 years from now, we're planning on doing the windows. And 3 years from now, we're planning on doing the roofs. And residents can weigh in on that stuff and say, wait a minute, we talked about, our kitchens, and why aren't our kitchens on this list? Or what's going on with that? Also, any changes that might exist to BHA policies. The admissions and continued occupancy policy, rent policy, how the rent is set and how it gets adjusted. And that's going to be a big thing at the BHA this coming year, because Congress and HUD have required BHA to do a number of revisions to its rent policies. And so residents will want to be engaged in all that to make sure that it's the best possible set of options that they've got. The Section 8 administrative plan. And then if there are any new proposals to redevelop a BHA site. So BHA all the time is coming up with, okay, the Doris Bunty apartments in Roxbury. Here's our plan to convert them to Section 8 over time, or other plans that may be coming up. Next slide, please. So there are 3 groups that make up the RAB. And that's the group that's from family public housing, the group from elderly disabled public housing, and then residents that have vouchers that aren't associated with any former BHA public housing site. So that could be Section 8 voucher, could be a mass rental voucher program, or the city also has a city-funded voucher program. And each of those groups gets to pick up to 10 representatives that serve on the RAB in the RAB elections, and they get to pick up to 10 alternates that can serve on the RAB. And then each of them ultimately pick a chair, and then those chairs rotate responsibilities. And it is, of course, the goal of the group to work together and not just sort of like say, oh, I'm a public housing tenant, I don't care about Section 8, because you never know. You may at some point actually have your development turn into Section 8. So you might be interested in finding out about that. Or on the other hand, you may be someone who has a Section 8, but your Section 8 isn't working for you, and you're trying to transfer into a BHA public housing site. So it's always good to get the perspective of the others that are in the other programs about what's going on, and everyone's working on sort of the collective goals of what will work best for low-income residents in Boston for the BHA to do, given the resources that they've got, and what can we do to advocate to get the housing authority and the city the resources that are needed. And then each group also picks who's going to be on a budget committee. So there's a budget committee that helps decide how the RAB's budget gets spent. And in addition to having the chairs on it and the treasurer and the vice treasurer, each one of those three groups, family public housing, elderly disabled public housing, section leased housing, get to pick a second person who serves on that budget committee. Next slide, please. So what do you have to do to serve on the RAB? So first things first, you need to be associated with the BHA programs in some way. So you have to either be a BHA public housing resident or a BHA leased housing resident, and you have to be an adult or an emancipated minor, 18 years of age or older, or sometimes there are people that are younger that have gotten emancipated that can enter into a lease. You have to be willing to attend meetings regularly for the RAB. And the RAB usually meets monthly, but we also, you might have extra meetings in between, particularly if you've been chosen as an officer or serving on a committee. The budget committee meets once a month in addition to the RAB meetings. Other committees might meet more frequently. And as of right now, the meetings are either in person or on Zoom. So you know, if you can't come to a meeting because you're going to be out of town or, you know, you're laid up for a bit or whatever, that's fine. We've actually had a fair amount of participation by people on Zoom. And of course, during the depths of the pandemic, we were totally on Zoom. We didn't have any in-person meetings, but then we eventually got back to having in-person meetings. Right now, the RAB has been meeting at the Haley Apartments over in Jamaica Plain near Jackson Square stop. But of course, people could decide to change that if they wish to. And right now, the RAB has usually been having its meetings on the second Thursday of each month in the evening. But again, as the new body gets elected, they could choose to change that time and date to whatever is most convenient for the people that are elected. You have to be willing to participate in training, follow the RAB bylaws and the ground rules, and to share contact information. So the RAB is a body of people. People need to treat each other well. You know, there are obviously in a range of people, you're going to have a range of opinions. And so there are ways that the RAB has tried to, over time, make sure that everybody's voice can get heard, but that no one person is dominating the discussion. And so we're soliciting to find out where everyone's at before votes get taken, or, you know, maybe we need more discussion or more information, and that gets discussed. But that's one of the reasons the RAB has a set of bylaws, is to sort of help say what's worked well. And of course, those bylaws can be revised over time if people are saying, oh, but this is a problem right now, and we need to deal with that problem. And the contact information is usually shared just with the RAB. So you're saying, I'm fine, so that if you need to contact me to say there's a meeting coming up, or, you know, you're a chair and some other chair can't serve on a particular date, that you can be contacted. By and large, though, that contact information is not getting shared to the whole wide world, because we know that people are volunteering and they haven't volunteered to like deal with every BHA Section 8 tenant or every BHA public housing tenant who might choose to contact them. But for example, the RAB does have an email address. And so Simone might get an email from a resident at a particular site and who's saying, oh, I think the RAB should talk about X, Y, or Z. And Simone might then pass it on to the chairs and say, hey, this resident has raised this issue. It looks like an interesting issue. What do you want to do with it? And so there are ways to try to be responsive on that. Similarly, if you're from your site, you may want to be reporting back to your site what's been going on at the RAB, and then getting feedback from your site. So then at your next RAB meeting, you could say, well, I was talking with the residents at Bellflower about X, and they wanted me to bring up this for our RAB meeting. And you just have to figure out, well, when's the right time on the agenda? You know, if you're talking about something else at that point, you might say, okay, that's okay, but let's move that to the end of the agenda because we've got something else that's our topic right now. And certain people could be disqualified from serving on the RAB because they have a role of being employed by the BHA or being employed by a private manager for a site or a developer for a site. Usually that's more if they're in a policy-making role or something like that. For example, if it was just more of a role like, oh, I was a resident coordinator, so I'm helping like make sure that people can get into apartments when, you know, repairs are being done or rehabs being done, that shouldn't be an issue at all. The other thing is you could be disqualified from the RAB if you owed money to the RAB. So sometimes in the past, money's been advanced for people to go to events and then they didn't go. And so then the RAB says, you need to pay us back because you didn't go. And there are circumstances in which someone might be removed for serious cause, something that they haven't done by the bylaws. That wouldn't be just for being absent. You can be removed for being absent, but that wouldn't disqualify you from serving in the future because those things can change. Somebody might be really sick right now, not be able to serve, but like a year later, they're in a good shape to come back, and that's fine. But then there are other circumstances where you could have been removed for cause. That's really only happened once, but it can be a reason. Let me move to the next slide. So how do the elections work? So there are different answers for this depending on if you're in public housing or if you're in leased housing. And since there are people here that I think are in both groups, I think I have to talk a little bit about both of those in a little bit more detail than I might otherwise. So all the voting is going to be done in person at the appropriate meeting. So those meetings I talked about on Tuesday the 3rd, Thursday the 5th, or Friday the 6th. So you can participate in the meeting, listen in. If you're a nominee, you could do a speech, for example, through Zoom, but you wouldn't be able to vote through Zoom. You physically have to be in the room in order to vote. Here's the main difference between the two types of elections. So for public housing, what happens is that each recognized tenant organization can select up to 3 representatives it's going to send to the election meeting to cast its ballots for that LTO. And that LTO can cast them for any of the candidates that are in that grouping: elderly, disabled, public housing, family public housing. And they get ballots. You'll see in a moment a sample ballot, and people can circle up to 10 names on the ballot for what their selections are. And you can that LTO could also designate a fourth person as an alternate in case one of your 3 designees gets sick. And so you're saying, oh, we need to sub in Ms. So-and-so because Mr. So-and-so couldn't be there, and that would be fine. So there are forms that the Mass Union staff have been contacting LTOs about to try to get completed, so that we know for each of the recognized tenant organizations that BHA has, who's going to be coming to those meetings to cast ballots for the LTOs. For leased housing, on the other hand, it's very different. You show up, you're in the BHA leased housing program, you vote. There's nothing about a designated LTO representative for that, because there are no LTOs for the leased housing program. You're just all kind of scattered. And so if you're in the leased housing program, it's important for you to show up. But as we've talked about before, nominations, you can get those nominations. And if you're in that voting meeting, you look at the ballot, you say, oh, okay, there are 10 names, there are 20 names on this ballot. I'm going to circle 10 names, or you might circle less if you don't recognize 10 people on that and you say, I only feel comfortable circling 8 because the others I really don't know. That's fine. And then those would get counted. You can only do 1 vote for 1 person on each ballot. So you can't say, oh, hi, I really like so-and-so, so I want to cast 5 votes for them. And you're not doing any ranking either. You're just circling 10 names or less. So you're not saying so-and-so's number 1, so-and-so's number 2, none of that. We're just looking for each voter, what are the names that you're circling, up to 10 names. Let me move to the next part. Yeah. So this is that form that I was talking about before about the task force authorization form. So the task force or the LTO holds a meeting. They select who their delegates or alternates are going to be. They complete that form by August the 28th, which is Wednesday of next week. And they get that form to the Mass Union staff. So that would be Ben and LaShonda are both here from Mass Union, and you'd get that to them. And the people that you designate don't necessarily have to be on your LTO board. All we care about is that your LTO board said, these are the people we're picking. They do need to be residents of your site. But for example, I know in Charlestown, for example, they picked a couple of people in there that aren't on their LTO board, but happen to be the staff of the LTO who are also residents at the site. And that's fine if that's what their board chose to do. And so that's the form on authorization. Let me move to the next part. And I'm going to talk a little bit and then I'm going to turn it over to LaShonda and Ben. Okay. So there's a nomination deadline of, again, August 28th, Wednesday of next week. And any BHA public housing resident or any BHA leased housing resident can nominate themselves or can nominate another person to serve on the RAB. If you're nominating yourself, that's fine. When you fill in the form, you're then saying, I'm okay with BHA checking my information to verify I am a BHA public housing tenant or leased housing tenant. If you're picking somebody else, that person needs to also sign because they're confirming, yes, I'm interested and willing to run. Because sometimes you might think somebody's really good, but that person actually doesn't want to run. And also then that person is giving the okay to BHA to check that they are associated with BHA. And then there's written statements that can be done by the nominee of up to 200 words or up to 2 minutes. So it can either be in writing or it can be oral. LaShonda's going to talk a little bit about that. And again, you don't have to be at the election meeting to be a nominee. So we are going to have the Zoom link set up. If, for example, you're not able to come that day or that evening to be in the election, but you're on Zoom, but you want to talk to the group, that's fine. That's one of the reasons the Zoom is there. So you can tell the group, here's why I'm interested in serving on the RAB. Here's what I think I would add. So let me just turn this over to Honda. Oh, you've got your mic. Yep. Nope, need to turn it on. Whoops.
Mic check. Hello. Hi. Hi, friends. My name's LaShonda. I'm with Mass Union of Public Housing Tenants, and I'm here with my boss, Ben, who is the Director of Organizing at Mass Union. So we're a nonprofit that is built by public housing tenants for public housing tenants, and we've kind of made ourselves experts on policy, and we offer resources and trainings, you know, to help people to organize. So if you have an active LTO, we can help you get more organized, or if you don't have one and you want to create one, we can help you do that too. But in this instance, we're here to spread the word about these upcoming elections, and I have two very important dates. So August 28th, that's the first date that's coming up. That's next Wednesday. So if you are thinking about running for a seat, then we're going to need that nomination form. Or if you're going to nominate someone else that you think might be suited for one of the seats, we'll need that form from you. And we're here today. We can take it right here, right now, or you can email it to us. Our emails, our telephone numbers are there. If you need help filling it out, we can take the information over the phone. So we just need those forms by August 28th. The other form that we're going to need is that your LTO's authorization form, the one where you're going to have 3 people from your site vote and represent your community. So August 28th, this form here, we're going to need that from the LTO. And then we're going to need your nomination form if you are running for the seat. Now, the other date that I want to make you aware of is the date that you have to show up to cast that ballot. So that is, keep me honest, Mac, is it September the 6th? That's a Friday. And so if you're going to vote on who should be who should best represent elderly disabled community for one of the 10 resident advisory board seats, then we'll need you here. Bruce Bowling Building on Friday, September 6th.
The only exception I would say with that is if we identify that you are actually a leased housing participant rather than an elderly disabled participant, we will redirect you to come to the Thursday, September the 5th meeting instead. So that's going to be very important for us to do that sorting and make sure you go to the right event.
Correct. And you'll hear from us leading up to the event too. So you've already seen us flyering, we've called you, we've emailed you, we've been at your Unity Day eating your hot dogs. Trust me, you will hear from us to remind you of the dates once again. But if you have any questions, I'll take them now. Do you have a question? Are you excited? Well, first of all, you showed up on a Friday. I know you're excited. That's great.
Some new line of work, a new line of responsibility. I like challenge, and I like to go ahead and I already wrote my name already.
Oh, you're running?
Yes, I am. What is the benefit for me about the whole thing?
The benefit for you is that we as a community get your wisdom, get your rich experience, your lived experience. You're bringing that to the table. And that lived experience gets to influence policy at BHA. So imagine a policy getting ready to be rolled out, and the difference between it going through and not possibly going through is your voice. So that's the benefit. Yeah. Oh, Are they gonna share this? You're gonna share the slides on the website, right?
Slides will be shared on the website. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Most definitely. So it'll be shared on the website. And just because I like you, you know what? I can email to them to you directly, just for you, because you're special. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Hi.
And we're going to have some more questions at the end of it. We're just at this point talking about the nomination process. Yep.
So if you're running for a resident advisory board, what do you have to fill out again?
So, if you're running, there is a nomination. I think you may have it. Yep, that's the one. I can take it. Yep, we got another one. All right, yeah, so we just want to have this returned to me or Ben, anyone at Mass Union by August 28th. So next Wednesday is the deadline. Oh, we got another one. I love this. They're rolling in. They are rolling in. I love this. So August 28th. Any other questions? We good?
And we've got a few more slides to cover, and then we'll take also some more questions. So,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you, friends.
thanks. So let me move to the next slide. Okay, so on the nomination form, this is shown on this screen. You can nominate yourself, you're nominating another, you need confirmation that they're okay with it. Again, complete that form by Wednesday of next week, August 28th. Get it to Mass Union, and then we'll know that your name is in and would go on one of the ballots for whichever is the most appropriate meeting for you based on which program you're in. Next slide, please. So this is a sample ballot, and this one is actually for elderly disabled public housing. So this gives you an idea of what a sample ballot might look like. Again, this is totally made up. So we didn't yet have the nominations come in, so I just like invented this, but I'm using it to illustrate how it works. So in this particular case, you'll notice it says only circle 10 names or less. So if you got a piece of paper like this, you'd know you'd only circle 10 names or less. And you'll also notice something else on this form, which is we've got a few cases where there are more than one person from a development. So in this example, we had 2 people that were from Bellflower, and we had 2 people that were from St. Botolph. And the reason I included that is I wanted to illustrate one of the rules that we have on the RAB when we actually do elections, which is we are trying to spread how many developments are represented on the RAB. So we want to give a fair chance to as many developments as possible getting on the RAB before we get to a second person from a particular site. That's true even if the second person from that site gets more votes than someone from a different site. So I'm going to show that how that works on the next slide. So in the sample ballot, there are 11 nominees from 9 sites. So someone is going to have to be an alternate, because remember we said there are only 10 members, and then there can be up to 10 alternates. And so the RAB bylaws say if 2 people are nominated from the same site, the person with the highest number of votes is the member, and the second highest would be the alternate, at least as long as there are nominees from other sites. So in this particular example, both Bellflower and St. Botolph have 2 nominees, so their runner-ups could be alternates. And then in the case of ties, nominees themselves at election meetings or the election meeting would decide which got the 10th member slot and which was the alternate. So in this example, we'd run through and make sure that all 9 sites got covered first before we would reach the second person at St. Botolph or at Bellflower. Let's say the Bellflower person got more, the second person at Bellflower got more votes than the second person at St. Botolph. Then that second person at Bellflower would take the 10th slot, and then the alternate would be the 11th person that would be from St. Botolph. If, on the other hand, the St. Botolph person and the Bellflower person both had the same vote total, which has happened, then we turn to them and say, do you have any preference? And the two of them might say, you know what? I just as soon be the alternate and have so-and-so be the member, and that's fine. And if they're both feeling strongly like, no, I can't make up my mind, then we turn to the group and we say, okay, let's do a quick round, figure this out. This doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened a few times, and that's the reason that we have these rules in the bylaws. So if you're at the election meeting, don't be surprised if this comes up. On the other hand, if it turns out that we have less than 10 names, that's fine. Then the second person from a development could easily get onto the RAB as a member. That would not be an issue. And then the next slide. Sorry. Next slide. Yeah. So some people ask me, does the same thing happen with leased housing? And the answer is less often, because most of the time with leased housing, everybody's scattered. And we've done the change on the bylaws to say that mixed finance leased housing sticks with the original public housing designation. So that's fine. But there could be cases where there are a number of people that are all living at the same leased housing site. And there again, we'd try to do the scattering thing before we get the second person from a particular site. So example I often give is we had a RAB member named Mr. Lee, and Mr. Lee lived at Moorville House in Fenway, and Moorville House I think had around 100 units or so of project-based Section 8. And so if Mr. Lee and somebody else from Moorville House both ran, and then there was that situation that I showed on the earlier ballot, then we'd have to figure that one out, just like we would with public housing, but it happens less frequently. Next slide. And then people also ask the question of what happens if we end up with less than 10 members in the election that are elected. And this has happened in the past, even despite really good efforts to do outreach, where like one group or another just ends up with less than 10. That's fine. There's actually provisions in the bylaws to add people over time. And so let's say, for example, that elderly disabled public housing ended up having 8 people that ran in the election, and you have to, so what you might then say is, okay, we have 2 member slots open, and people are aware, oh, there's some other good people out in the community that might be good for the RAB. And so as the RAB meets during the course of the year, you invite those persons to join the RAB and they can speak to that. Oh, and I realize I didn't cover something earlier, so I should have been chastised. One thing I did want to have is a RAB member who's currently on the RAB speak to their experience of what it's been like to serve on the RAB. And so I think Cassandra, who's actually the newest member of the RAB, had volunteered for that. So if somebody could get the mic to Cassandra, I apologize. I should have done this earlier. But Cassandra is an example of a new person joining the RAB during its life.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Cassandra. I'm from the Asonia Homes in the North End or Boston. I'm a new member of RAB, and my experience so far has been pretty good. You know, the ability to feel included is a really important part of being on RAB, and I do plan, or I anticipate, sticking around for quite a few years to also pass on the torch of empowerment to new people that join. And I'm glad to be the one that's able to represent the Asonia Homes Because then I can pass back what I learned from each meeting to anyone that wants to know about it, because you have people who are genuinely curious about what happens in these meetings, but are also very apprehensive about making a physical presence. So me coming out to do that is not just for myself, but also to bring back to my residential community. What else can I say? Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Cassandra. Let me just also check. I know that there are some others that are in the room who have served on the RAB, on the past RAB, who may want to speak a little bit to the experience. So just give them the opportunity if they wish to. Anyone want to do that?
My name is Eugenia, and I've been on the RAB for many years. And we've worked with the Housing Authority with the 5-year plan, which is our main goal, is to work with Housing Authority with the 5-year plan. And so that is where our voice is, that's where our power is, and that is where we get our money from. And so when we get our money, we use that money to go to conferences, to get information, to bring that information back, to give it to the LTOs, spread that news. We hope the LTOs then spread that news to the residents, so the residents know who RAB is. A lot of LTOs don't even know who the RAB is. So we want to get this information out so LTOs know who RAB is. And that is a goal that I hope that we succeed in with this new election, to get the RAB to let the LTOs know. And I also had a question, Mac, is that we're talking about the elections and everything. How do the nominees know if they were approved?
Okay, that's a good question. We will, the nominee approval process is fairly simple. Once we have the name in, there's just some double checking with BHA to be sure that we've got the person's on the BHA program and we've got them identified for the correct BHA program. That is, it's public housing, elderly disabled, or it's family public housing, or it's the leased housing program. And then we can email everybody out to say, hi, you're on the ballot and you're on the ballot for this. And so we can easily do that. There's going to be a short turnaround window on that, because we finalize this on Wednesday of next week, and the elections are on the Tuesday after Labor Day. But we can get that word out to people, and Mass Union staff can probably speak to that. Yep. Or if you, yeah. Just one moment, let's finish this and then you can
I
take
just
your
want to say that
questions.
I
Yep.
will take the responsibility of reaching out to everyone individually to let you know that your nomination has been accepted and you'll be on the ballot. I'll own that. And definitely I can share my telephone number, email, just so you have that available.
Georgia, you had a question? Okay. Yeah, so let's have you have the mic. Yep.
Hi, as I said earlier, I'm affiliated with Section 8. I've been on the RAB for many years, and it is excellent. And everybody should be involved. Everybody should want to be involved in the meetings, and they do feed you. All right?
Okay.
So get involved.
Thank you. And I think there's only one slide. Sorry. I'm sorry. Was there somebody else with a hand? Okay, the white hat. Sorry.
You said this is the end of the 5-year plan. So they're reviewing, I'm not sure, but does the members of the Resident Advisory Board, are they involved with the revision of the new plan?
Yes, they are. So what will happen is actually Boston Housing Authority has already done starting a resident survey to get feedback from people about the new 5-year plan. And then there will be a draft 5-year plan that they will be meeting with the RAB on almost as soon as the RAB has its first meeting. And we'll be asking, what do you think about this? You know, are there things that we should add? Should we refine this in some way or another? And so, yes, people will definitely be involved with that. Usually the RAB PHA plan season is in the fall. So usually it's between like Halloween and mid-December. And the BHA also has public hearings in like the second week or first week of December to also get public feedback on the PHA plan. And then they get it out to HUD and to EOHLC in January. And then usually they hear back from those agencies by April or May about approvals. John could speak to that as if he wishes. Okay. Yep. One thing I wanted to add on that from the last slide, sorry, but that I can just add one little thing from the last slide, which is many of the people who've been alternates that get added to the RAB in between times have moved up to become regular members of the RAB. Alternates are eligible to join the RAB if they've attended at least 4 meetings in the course of a year. And so there are a lot of alternates who have been pretty diligent in doing that. And we've had some of the best RAB members we've had are people who started as alternates. And then the last slide I have for you is about the first meeting of the new RAB. So because we need to like turn around and get information out to the whole new elected board after we've completed the elections on September 6th, we're not going to hold the meeting the second week in September because that would be too short a time turnaround. Instead, it's going to be for September, the 3rd week of September. So it's going to be September the 19th. It'll be at 6 p.m. at 30 Bickford Street. At that meeting, the new board will be selecting officers. And it's also going to decide on a regular time and place for future meetings. And they'll also set a date for the mandatory officer training. And as John explained at our last session, that officer training is open for all other RAB members. And it's usually to give officers some good tips about how to get their work done well, you know, how to facilitate a meeting, how to deal with budget issues, how to keep track of records if you're the RAB secretary, those sorts of things. So that's the end of the slide presentation. And I don't know if there are any other questions that people may have. If people don't have questions, I would recommend that you connect with the Mass Union and BHA staff that are here to make sure that you've got your nomination forms in if you need that, that you've got your LTO authorization forms. In addition, they can make arrangements for any cabs for people. I think there may have been some calls out in advance to make sure that there can be cab arrangements for people who are leaving, that sort of thing. But I'm going to stop talking now. Thanks.
The one thing I failed to mention was that if you need support with your speech, I'm happy to help out with that. We can help with that too. So we can schedule one-on-ones, or if a group of you want to do it on a Zoom, we can do it that way too. I'm a decent writer, an okay speaker, so I'm happy to help with that. And we're going to stick around in the back of the room if you have any other questions for us. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, he's just like, I'm done. Yeah, it's like, hello, thank you for coming.